We've been on hiatus, but we are back at it here on Trust the Profits. This is Doubling Down with Colin Sheehan, and I have a special guest in tow. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Trust the Profits. Doubling Down's been on a little bit of a hiatus, so when I return, I got to bring my good friend and old partner, Vinny Blond, back. Vinny, what's happening?
Not much, man. Not much. Been a couple weeks since I've seen you, but here we are.
Yeah, me and Vinny spent the Whitney together. And Vinny, I got to ask you before we get into this weekend's card, which will include the Alabama. We're going back old school and doing a daily double today. I have been doing a little bit of pick threes the last couple of shows that I did, but we're going to go old school. We're going to do a daily double. But first, Vinny, on Thursday, we had another takedown at Saratoga. What were your thoughts on the horse being ridden by Irad being placed up in first place in the Violet Stakes?
I mean, it's always it sucks when you have. I had the 6 horse that got taken down, so that sucked to begin with. But it was the right call, in my opinion. Horse came out. Irad's horse seemed to have a little bit more, lost by a nose. A kind of a no-brainer decision. It's just terrible though when this happens the other way and Irad's on the horse on the inside and he herds out and they leave the horse up. And it's like maybe one out of every 100 times Irad herds he actually gets taken down. So just consistency. That's all I want is consistency with their decisions. One way or the other. If it's consistently bad, fine. If it's consistently good, that'd be better. But it's just tough, and you got to feel for Bill Parcells, who who again should have been in the winner's circle of a stakes race and was taken down today.
Yeah, rough way. My feelings are always, what does my gut say first when I watch it live? And watching it live, I thought, yeah, it seemed okay to me. You go back in the replays and sure you can hem and haw over it. And I can understand why you think it was the right call. It probably ultimately was. When I watched the race the first time, that's kind of like, what's my immediate reaction? Is it obvious or is it, do we need a replay to show us? And to me, watching it live, of course, you don't have that head on, so you don't see how egregious it was. But to me, I was a little surprised they took him down until I saw those replays, and that was just my first opinion of that race. But next, we got to get on to this week's show. We're going for Saturday, August 19th, up at Saratoga. Of course, no one knows Saratoga better than Vinny. He's got the best information around, so that's why I call him on this show for New York. And we're going to go race 8 and race 9. Race 9 is your Alabama on Saturday for the fillies. Race 8, we're going 1 mile, an optional claimer, 80,000, non-winners of 3. We have a field of 8, that's non-winners of 3 over a certain period of time. Vinny, what did you like in this field of 8, and where did you end up?
I ended up using 3 horses here, and I tossed the morning line favorite, Gerrymander, who is just it really is just burned money. This horse just seems to never get home. Looked really good last year, winning the Mother Goose, and since then has just done nothing but burn money. And as the morning line favorite, I feel like it's a vulnerable favorite. So I went with I'm using the 1, the 4, and the 7 here. So second, third, and fourth choice on my double ticket here.
Yeah, and that's your field. We'll take a look at what I highlighted here on the Brisnet pace play. You have a lot of early speed, I think, in this race, right? I mean, Gerrymander's in E8. You got Movie Moxie, who's also EP8. Mosienko's in EP8. The other ones are EPs, although 5, 6, and 7. Nostalgic is a horse that I'm extremely interested in here, coming from off the pace, and part of that is absolutely because of what I see here, right? You want the best horse closing when you see a lot of speed. I think what we talked about prior to the show was I think that key race is going to be from July 19th, when I think we saw a little bit of what Nostalgic is capable of. Here he is on the outside. Watch right here. He's going to get in some trouble and get bumped and pushed out. And as you watch in the stretch run here, that wasn't egregious. It was enough, though, to kind of toss him off stride a little bit. And as they're coming down to the finish, I mean, this is a really good close by Nostalgic on the outside, gets beat by 63 Caliber with Gerrymander there, the number 2 on the inside. So you have 3 horses coming back from this race, and I was impressed with what Nostalgic did in that run there. And so to me, second off the layoff at 4, I'm hoping for another improvement for this Bill Mott trained 4-year-old filly being ridden by his man, Junior Alvarado. So I am all about Nostalgic, as you had the 7 on your ticket as well at 3-1.
Yeah, I like you said, second off the layoff, first race off the layoff was good. I like when horses off the layoff, especially going from like 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, for speed figure wise, run like around back to that, like to their top figure. And Nostalgic did. Nostalgic's career high buyer is a 95, I believe. Yeah, 95 last November at Aqueduct. Ran a 95 and just missed. Comes back and gets a 94 buyer for that first start off the bench. So I think horse is definitely eligible to improve, and that's actually the same reason why I'm giving the number 4 Favor another shot here. Was 5th out of 5 last time, as we saw in that replay. Kind of faded there after Nostalgic passed her, but again, actually ran a career high buyer in that race, getting an 87. So 2 horses that, from an angle that I like playing, definitely look eligible to improve, and neither of them are the morning line favorite, which I like a lot more. I would kind of be shocked though if Nostalgic doesn't go off the favorite. I feel like Nostalgic is, especially with the meet Mott's had on the dirt, I feel like Nostalgic is going to be the favorite. But knowing Gerrymander is going to take money, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I am too. And even if Nostalgic goes off the favorite, though, I still want Nostalgic on my ticket. That was the horse that
Hmm.
was on top for me. And regardless of what the odds are, Nostalgic is not one that I would toss. The reason I was against favor, I agree with what you said. And I'll also mention that Brisnet sees it the exact same way. So the figures are a little bit different. But Nostalgic got a 101 career high in that race in November and came back to run a 100 in the first race as a 4-year-old for her. So, not even necessarily a step up, a repeat of that race certainly puts Nostalgic right there. Although a step up, second off of a layoff as a 4-year-old, is certainly could be expected. Favor, I was a little concerned. Maybe I looked too much into this, but Tyler Gaffleone jumps back aboard. And when Tyler was aboard this horse, you just didn't get the best as that you did when you got Luis Saez or Paco Lopez aboard down at Gulfstream. That was what I highlighted and read when I went through it the first time. And that's kind of what ultimately, when I went back through it, I left Favor off. I went with the 10-1 shot as my other horse in this leg, and I'm going to try and get by with the 6 and the 7. The 6, Mosienko, almost the exact opposite reason of what I just said about Favor, is Saez is 3 for 3 on this horse the last time Saez has been aboard. And you get a horse for course here. I mean, this horse has raced up at Saratoga 8 times, has 3 victories, 2 seconds, and a third, $171,000 won up at Saratoga. I'll take my shot with a horse like that, who's not only shown the ability to be forwardly placed, but also in the last race up at Saratoga on July 20th, came from 6th place at the second call to get ahead and was 5 wide in that race. So Mosienko at 10-1 was interesting to me. Any interest for you, or should I? Am I wrong?
No, I think the horse makes complete sense. And for me, I mean, I used 2 in the next leg. If I had singled in the next leg, this would have been my next horse in.
Okay.
It came down for me using this horse or using Linda Rice, who just, again, she just doesn't, she just wins. I mean, movie Moxie last time out just looked ridiculously good. And yeah, chances are this horse does not run back to that effort. But I don't know how. Like, I just feel like it's not worth the risk of leaving movie Moxie off. Um, I feel like your 6 is a really good horse though for going short on like a pick 4 or pick 5 ticket, because the horse makes a ton of sense. He really does like the course. Size gets the best out of him. Just one that I couldn't go 4 by 2.
All right, leg two. We're moving on to the grade one Alabama, Saturday, August 19th, 2023. A field of 10 and a competitive field of 10. The interesting thing here, Vinny, for me certainly, is the Alabama's a mile and a quarter. So you're testing these fillies on distance. And this is a race where, sure, you might be able to have seen what they've done in the past, but you do have to take into consideration what they can do going that extra distance. That is point one. Point two, I will make, Vinny, is that it's the theme that I maybe is stuck in my head, but these fillies are inconsistent, and you just begin to rely on one of these fillies, and they let you down. Obviously, pretty mischievous for a bit there. Was one of the consistent ones. We won't really give that last race the win, but before that, I think Pretty Mischievous was making a run for being one of the consistent ones you could rely on. So with that, you're getting a horse like Julia Shining at 5-1 for Pletcher. This is a horse I think has talent, and I was high on this horse this year, both in Tampa and Keeneland, and she let me down. But she's sired by Curlin, and as I said, you're going a mile and a quarter now with a horse who's continued to show increasing speed figures. Also, the last victory was a mile and eighth on a sloppy track. Sometimes I think that tends to relate to being okay going a little bit longer. So Julia Shining is one that I'm certainly interested in at 5-1. That's where I will start off my second leg of this ticket. How about you?
Yeah, I'm starting in the same place. I've been a fan of this horse as well. Full sister to Malafat. She just didn't put it together this year. So kind of a curious spot for him to bring her back in. He does have 3 in here, which is a little like not really like super concerning, but it kind of is concerning that he does run 3 in here. He's also bringing Chocolate Gelato back, and he's giving Gambling Girl another shot. I think Julia Shining, just of the 3, has the potential to be better. So that's why I used it. The 5-1 price I think is very fair for both her losses this year, even though she should have won. It's not like she got blown out. She was right there. The distance should be no problem. Saez gets on. I think the horse makes a ton of sense, but she definitely needs to. She needs to have taken a step forward in this little layoff she's had. Uh, so we'll see if that happens.
And you have another lightly raced horse here who you're including on your ticket that I know you're high on with randomized. Why don't you talk about randomized?
Yeah, randomized one. Broker Maiden in March this year very easily. Came back very lightly raced, third career start, second of the year. Chad throws her in the acorn and probably a little bit over her head, but she took money that day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which was a good sign. She went off at like 6 or 7-1. I think it's like 6.7 was the official. Um, obviously some of those horses came back to run in what was the race up here? A bunch of them just came back to run in. They ran in the sprint on Whitney Day. I forget the name of the sprint they ran in.
Oh,
Um,
the test.
yes, the test. Some of that
Pretty
field came back.
mischievous.
Yeah, some of that field came back to run in the test. Her
Darth Vader.
stablemate, yeah, her stablemate came back to win a lesser stakes up here in a seed. A colt out of that race came back to win a stakes at Monmouth as well. So that race she's coming out of there in the Acorn has produced a few winners. A few horses are running pretty good out of it. She just seems like she has potential to be just better than these. And after that last race, I mean, if she repeats that last race, nobody in this
Yeah.
field is going to beat her. A
Yeah.
nine. I'm going to guess probably like a mid 90s buyer will win this race based on who's in it. And she ran a 97 last time out, so she doesn't really need to improve. The others all need to improve to get up to her. Am worried that it is Joel and it's Chad on the dirt. That's always Chad on the dirt this year in stakes has really not been fantastic. But this one's kind of had hype all year, so at 9-2, I think it's fair. I think wet paint is vulnerable and just kind of seemed like one of the logical ones to land on.
Yeah, and speaking of wet paint, I think one of the key races you might want to pay attention to is that Coaching Club Oaks back in Saratoga in July, and here it is what you're seeing here with wet paint on the outside, really closing impressively. On the inside, there you have Sacred Wish at 10-1. I looked at this race and decided to use Sacred Wish at 8-1 here in this spot, as opposed to using wet paint at 2-1. Close enough for me. You felt otherwise. What were your thoughts on Sacred Wish?
Yeah, I really like Sacred Wish that day, and she just like she got the trip that I thought she needed, and she still wasn't good enough going a mile and an eighth. She was lugging a little bit late in the stretch. You tell she was getting tired. Um, I just don't know how she has a better trip than she had that day and can win against this field going longer. If it was I thought maybe like a mile and a 16th race would be really good for her. I understand why they're taking a shot with a big grade one here at Saratoga. I just don't know. I mean, Johnny's gonna have to get more out of her and try to get a better trip than that, which I don't know if you can do. I mean, she sat what 2 lengths behind the speed. She made one move. She took the lead at the top of the stretch, and she opened up by like 3, and she still got run down. Just I
Yeah.
don't know how I don't know how it gets better, like how she gets a better trip than what she had last time.
The other horse I'm going to use is Gambling Girl, who from Brisnet Prime Power ends up being the top choice actually in here, which I thought was interesting. I highlighted the early speed for you again, as we talked about in the last race. I think you're going to have enough pace up front to set up nicely for a horse like Gambling Girl. What I like is that this horse has raced the last 3 times at a mile and an eighth. You're getting her second off the layoff. I know she finished 8 lengths behind in that Coaching Club Oaks. That's certainly not, flattering from a, looking at it on paper, but I'll blame that on the layoff. And if this horse can get back to what it did the two before, both in the Gazelle and the Kentucky Oaks, with Irad and Pletcher, I'll take a shot at 8-1 with Gambling Girl. If I'm not using wet paint, it's kind of one of those instances where, like I said, I think that these 3-year-old fillies are, they're all kind of mixed in on who wins on a certain day. And if I am going to go against that heavy favorite of wet paint, then maybe not heavy favorite, but favorite, at least on the morning line, I like to swing and I don't like to miss. So I'll use Gambling Girl in my ticket. And then I'm using Taxed, man. I love, I fall in love with some of these horses. And Taxed is like that one that I just don't want to get beat by Taxed. And that's just a personal thing. So if you're watching the show relying on us, I'll be completely honest in my my love of Tax being thrown in here. I love that Black Eyed Susan victory at 11-1 over Feza and Hoosier Philly, right? I mean, those were the two that we had talked about many times in November and December and into the new year. And I think ran a respectable second behind Defining Purpose at the Indiana Oaks. Coming back to Saratoga, the distance is probably a little bit of a concern for me. Like I said, this is more of a personal play. If I don't use Tax and beats me, I'll like never do the show again. One of those types of deals. So love Taxed and keeping Taxed on my ticket. We're Taxed or Gambling Girl. Any interest to you, or you're comfortable with the two you chose?
Gambling Girl is always interesting. She's just so inconsistent. It's like you
Yeah.
get one
Well,
race,
they
she
all
looks
are. They all are,
right,
though.
and like I was on Gambling Girl in the coaching club, and again, I thought she got a good trip, and she just didn't fire, and maybe it was the layoff. But like, I mean, you run down her running lines, and it's just like it's either close B or she just doesn't show up, and it's like at a certain point, you kind of got to cut. I just got to cut those horses off, and that's why I went with randomized. Who's got to win over the track? It was like that was that was kind of it. I'm hoping she stays around the 4-1. If she stays around 4-1, I'll play her to win. If she doesn't, if she gets bet down, I'll probably just play this double and live with it. But I mean, none of these fillies are super consistent. The distance
Wild
is
card.
very question. Yeah, it's questionable for all of them. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Wet Paint just runs them all down because she's a
Yeah.
classy filly. But at the same time, it's like I don't know if she's done enough this year to say like, oh yeah, like a mile and a quarter is perfect for her. Like, I don't think that's. I also don't think that's the case. So, and I
Yeah,
don't think I don't think any like unlike unlike a couple years ago when you had like when Malathat ran in this race where it was like, oh, you know what, like she might be a legit threat to the older fillies. I don't think any of these. I don't think any of these are going to be anywhere near where Nest is. Like
right.
I don't think it matters. Like I think this is if Wet Paint wins though, I think it does open up the 3-year-old filly of the year between her and Pretty Mischievous.
Yep.
If Wet Paint doesn't win, it probably Pretty Mischievous has it locked up already, considering she did win the Kentucky Oaks, which I know I know it's only one race, but usually the Oaks and the Derby, when in terms of voting, kind of count as 2 races. So if Wet Paint doesn't win here, Pretty Mischievous probably has that wrapped up.
Yeah, and I think Wet Paint is definitely an interesting horse. And if I use Wet Paint, I just wouldn't use any of the other ones. But I'm trying to get a little bit more of the prices home here. That was more my ticket structure. So you toss Wet Paint. I wouldn't blame you if you go like 6, 7, and then single Wet Paint here. If you wanted to do that for only $2 on my ticket, that would make perfect sense too. If you do think that Wet Paint is classy as she is and can get the distance, but we're just relying a little bit more on what we've seen this whole season on the 3-year-old fillies, and we'll take a stab somewhere else. So Vinny goes 1-4-7 with the 3-8. It'll cost you $6. I'm going 6-7 with the 1-3-7-9, costing you $8 for the daily double. Pay attention to those probables on your ADWs. Make sure you're going to be getting the money back. So you might want to, if one of those is paying $8, you might want to put $2 or $3 just on that one double to make it worth it. So that's something you want to pay attention to. Vinny, where else are we going to find you this weekend?
I'll be at Saratoga this Saturday. I'll be there for the Alabama, so usually near the paddock bar. If anybody's looking to say hi, I am there, or send me a message.
That's where we like to hang out. Good to see you again,
Yep.
Vinny. Thank you to everybody else. Like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Colin Sheehan, and this is Doubling Down.